12 EU countries are asking the European Commission to suspend airline passenger rights when issuing refunds. The member states say carriers are facing a serious cash flow challenge. Transport ministers are in a video conference to talk over the issue. Customers have been left out of pocket illegally when the COVID-19 pandemic caused companies to cancel flights. People have been refused refunds by airlines and offered vouchers instead. EU law states passengers must be given the option of a refund within 7 days. But Air France and its partner KLM are delaying any repayments for a year. Well, for more on this, we can talk now to our correspondent Jack Parrock, who's in Brussels for us. Jack, we spoke to the European Commission Commissioner for Transport yesterday, and she certainly made it clear that she was against this idea. Is it clear now that she's had a change of heart?
Well, the European Commission is likely to stand by the fact that the laws should be upheld and that people should be able to get their refunds to their flights within 7 days. But it looks like the member countries of the European Union, specifically these 12 that you outlined, led initially, as we found out from our reporting, by the Dutch, that they are calling for a temporary suspension for a few months to allow airlines to keep some of the money and issue these vouchers. What they're saying is that the airlines need to be saved. And I actually just got off a video call myself on the sidelines of this video call meeting of EU transport ministers with the Cypriot transport minister, Yanis Karousos, and he was telling me essentially that for Cyprus this is absolutely essential because they're an island nation. If airlines come out the back of the coronavirus crisis and aren't able to get passengers and to get people to countries like Cyprus, that their industry will suffer heavily. Having said that, there are lots of people who are very unhappy about this and say that it leaves consumers, leaves flight passengers who've bought their tickets stranded and without the money and without the flight, and that it's not possible. We'll have to wait and see. We know that this meeting is being heavily extended. It was expected that there was going to be a press conference around 7:30 local time, but it's now looking like it might be extended past that. Reason being is because a lot of the ministers are taking up quite a lot of time. They have a lot to say about this during the video call talks.
Well, Jack, of course, this is an unprecedented period we're going through, but what does this say about the enforceability of EU rules and regulations? Is there a chance now that we could see more flexibility coming in, and is this just the beginning?
Well, the issue with this one, Tokes, specifically is that while it is an EU regulation, it's down to the member countries of the European Union to impose this regulation, this 7-day repayment of refunding of the money. And so what we're seeing actually already is that companies like KLM, for instance, the Dutch airline, have just been offering people vouchers. They haven't been offering people refunds. So this is what they're going to be battling over, how to ensure that the member states do it. And while the member states aren't doing it, essentially the law doesn't work. Now, we spoke to a man named Gilbert Ott, who's from an organisation called God Save the Points, a passenger rights organisation, a travel website. Take a listen to what he had to say about this.
Exist for a reason. Laws exist for a reason. Sure, these are unprecedented times, and I absolutely hate that there are job losses looming for airlines and that air travel may not recover for years. But at the same time, we entrust governments to protect us as consumers. If an Amazon order didn't show up at your door, you would expect your money back. So why a flight is any different is beyond my comprehension.
It's a real battle and a balance, in fact, Tokes, between consumer rights on one side and the intention from the EU's member governments to try and save the airlines off the back of this COVID-19 crisis.
Jack Parrock there with the latest on that meeting in Brussels. Thank you. Well, Mark Watts is a former MEP and the coordinator of UK transport in Europe. He helped write the legislation that requires airlines to offer refunds within 7 days. And he joins me now also from Brussels. Well, thanks for talking to us here. Well, as the author of, one of the authors rather, of this legislation, what do you think about the way this has been handled so far?
Well, good evening. I'm very concerned because what this really is an attempt to bail out the airlines, but to make the passengers, the consumer, pay for the bailout is completely unacceptable. This is the passengers' money that they've put into a ticket for a flight that didn't take place. It was cancelled. they're entitled to their money back. There should be no discussion.
Do you not think that, given the extenuating circumstances, but this could perhaps be the one time in history where rules need to be relaxed or suspended?
Well, of course, every rule now needs to be reviewed and relaxations where appropriate need to take place. But in this case, this is the 12 member states of the EU, led by France and the Netherlands, asking for the passenger basically to loan the airlines money for a bailout. And I think it's expecting hard-pressed families who are themselves trying to struggle with the COVID-19 crisis to do without hundreds of euros potentially of money for a matter of months and months and months is completely unacceptable. If the airlines need bailing out, well, that's a matter for the countries of Europe to bail out the airlines, not for the passengers to give up their compensation. Well, it's not even compensation. Let's make it very clear. They're asking for just a refund of the money for a ticket for a flight that never took place. In fact, when we drafted this law, we actually considered where exceptions should apply and where they should not. And this is one area where we said that even in the event of a serious crisis, the passenger should always be allowed to have a refund of his or her fare.
Yeah. Well, it seems there are no winners in this situation, but what would you say for those thousands of people who are employed by these airlines which are now clearly struggling?
Well, of course, action has to be taken to save our airlines. And I think member states, the countries of the EU, have to step up to the plate and intervene directly to try and save the airlines. And they should be bold and brave enough to do that. But they shouldn't make the passenger, the consumer, the hard-pressed citizen at home give up their hard-earned savings to bail out the airlines. So take up the challenge, member states, bail out those airlines, but not at the expense of the passenger.
Mark Watts, former MEP and coordinator of UK Transport in Europe, thanks for joining us on the programme.